All right, welcome guys. This is another webinar. I think I'm going to be doing webinars like once a month starting this year. It's something I want to start doing again um, just because it's fun. And I think it's cool because I can touch on a bunch of different topics and you guys can get me live. What I want everybody to know is these webinars and virtually the majority of the trainings that I do, because I've been doing this, man, it's been like a decade now. I've been doing stuff, documenting, maybe not training and teaching for 10 years, but I've been documenting stuff online and social media for about 9 or 10 years now. This has gotten to the point where it's simple in execution. So many of these webinars, there isn't this extensive preparation, right? Same thing with YouTube, what we post, and ultimately you can get to that level too. Now, how does this translate to prospecting? You reach a level of proficiency after a long time to where picking up the phone, going door to door, engaging a conversation with people from a sales standpoint becomes very easy for you and natural. That's what you want. Okay. That's how you become a natural at sales. Okay. It's not ditching the scripts and all the salesy stuff that people claim. Anyone who tells you to ditch the salesy stuff has no idea what they're talking about, because mastery of technique performed flawlessly and effortlessly through repetition now makes you the natural. Because to be considered a natural, you need to be effective. So the natural, right, and this is like a little bonus I can give you, the natural is using technique. They're just not aware of it. They're doing things correctly without being consciously aware of it. That's why we call them a natural. If you tell many naturals, explain to me how you got that sale, many of them can't give you an explanation. What separates me from them, as an example, is I can break down every single thing that I said, the sequences that I took them through, so you can now take it and duplicate that. Okay? I will smash the natural because I have technique, I'm aware of it, and I can teach it. I would much rather have that than be the guy who just goes, I don't know, it just works. Okay? Want to make that clear distinction. This is why all the basics, the sales stuff that we've been talking about for years, it works. It works. All right. So let's begin. A couple of things that I wrote down. Number one, I wrote diversify your lead sources. This is the first part of number one. Meaning, I understand many of you probably you want to like narrow down to a niche or niche, however you say it. And you want to like, oh, I want to be the king of random door knocking. I want to be the king of for sale by owners. I want to be the king of this lead source or that lead source. Okay. Now, what I'm going to say first to that is this. If you're somebody who's already transacting a good amount, like you're doing at least 25, 30, 40 transactions a year, you can do that. Now you can start narrowing down what you want to do because you already have a baseline foundation of transactions, momentum, and business flow coming in, a pipeline, and all the other stuff that most people want. Okay. If you're new or you haven't hit that volume yet, you're severely limiting yourself if you do that. Okay. Because, and we're going to talk about this later, maybe the lead source that you choose right now, it's not good, or that's a path that's going to make you work harder when there's other possible lead sources in your area and for you that may actually be better for you to produce business. Okay, but we're going to cover the specificity of that later. Okay, I would recommend you have at least 4. So let me give you some examples. Absentee owners, just listed, just sold, calls, and door knocking, right? Previewing homes and door knocking around them. That's another source, right? For sale by owner, expired, sphere of influence, probate, pre-foreclosures, short sales, okay, divorces. Those are 10 different lead sources right there. I'd recommend you pick at least 4, probably 5 that you go after. Because if you're regularly prospecting, okay, the next part of this is you have to track your numbers. This is key. We know this, but you need to specifically track your numbers. What lead sources am I contacting? If I made 50 contacts today, how many were from each lead source, right? And you track them. Here's why. Here's why. The moment you start tracking them to that level of specificity, right, over a couple months, over 6 months, over a year, now you have data that you can analyze and interpret. What I mean by that is this. If you start tracking your numbers 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, I can start to spot patterns. What if by doing it, you start to see, hey, Between January and March, I kill it with expireds, but the rest of the year kind of sucks. April, May, June, fantastic for absentee owners. I set 12 appointments in those 3 months. Right? Then year over year, you can start to see those patterns, right? Or man, third and fourth quarter were amazing for sale by owners, right? You can start spotting these things. So now what do you do as an agent? Because you're tracking your numbers and analyzing, you can say, okay, first quarter, I'm really going to focus. If I do 4 or 5 hours of prospecting a day, I'm going to allot 2 of them to expires because that's when I kill it with expireds. And you change your time frame. 2 hours expireds because they're hot right now. Right? And you can start making those micro adjustments to your schedule and what you do based on the data that you're gathering and the analysis of that data. This is key, right? This is one of those practices that the top level people in all businesses do. And most realtors will never do it because they don't treat their business like a business. You have to start looking. This is how I, after 6 months or a year, started spotting where my time was valuable and where it wasn't as valuable as an agent. And when you do this, you not only have more control, you can predict, you can duplicate, right? And it's a little easier for you to look into the future with more accuracy, which is what you want. All right. But you have to track your numbers. At the very, very bare minimum, track how many conversations you're having, the lead sources that you're having conversations with, how many leads you're gathering, how many appointments you're setting, how many appointments you're attending, right? That way you know. And then current listings, pending transactions, and closings. Track all that stuff and keep a working sheet. I remember like the old school coaches like Mike Ferry, they even have scripts and those sheets for free on their website, and you can just log on and download them. I'm sure at this point you can probably Google them and find it, right? All that information is readily available, or re-listen to the recording as well if you're not taking notes, and write down the things that I just said, put it on an Excel spreadsheet, right, on your computer, and every day at the end of your day, plug in your numbers so you know, right? Because that's that working document. If you do not track your numbers, you don't have a business. Because this extends outside of your real estate business. You should be doing this with your finances. All of you who are professional real estate agents should already have CPAs. You should have already opened up a corporation to run your business under. You should have somebody bookkeeping for you. These are all basics that you need in the financial realm that will spill over into your business world. Why? You remember the cliche saying, how you do anything is how you do everything? Well, my estimation is going to be, if you're a mess outside of real estate and you're all over the place, guess what? In real estate, you're going to be a mess and all over the place too. We now have to look at everything because everything is correlated. If you guys want to be a beast in the real estate business, you need to be a beast everywhere else too. You're not going to find people in this business who are complete slobs or losers in their regular life, but suddenly they're a master real estate person. That's just, you're not going to find that. Okay. That's number one, right? Number one and kind of number two tied together. Okay. Here's number two. This is what I wrote. Get to the point and sidestep unconscious responses. Okay. First one, get to the point. You guys really need to learn to be succinct when you have discussions with people, right? Whether we're masters at communicating or not, if you door knock, if you cold call, if you prospect people, you're entering their world, right? And most people don't want to talk to us. Just like if you guys use a service, your dentist or anybody else, you only talk to them when you need them. You don't want them having regular conversations with you all the time. It's like, dude, when I need you, I'll contact you, right? So you have to think from that perspective. It's not that we're bugging people, but they're not particularly excited to talk to us, I guess is probably the better way to say it. So with that said, get to the point. I tell people, I got a few questions for you, then I'll leave. You know what? I'm calling you today. I only got 2 or 3 quick questions and I'll let you go. I say that at the beginning of every conversation to indicate I'm aware, right? That I'm, in quotes, interrupting maybe somebody, something that you're doing. But number two, I'll be out of your hair quickly. I know you probably didn't want this, and maybe now's not the best time. This is what I'm sub-communicating to them. And I understand that. I acknowledge it. Let's move forward. Just like if you guys call somebody or knock on their door and you hear stuff in the background where you see stuff, if you're door knocking, acknowledge it. You look a little busy. I'll make this quick. That's super powerful. It shows that you're aware of the situation but it also injects that power, confidence, and certainty that you need into the situation. This will take your scripting and your dialoguing to the next level if you start to do this, but get to the point. Yes, we're going to deal with different personality types that are more expressive and this and that, but you still, even when you're elaborating, you still want to trim the fat off of it. You're never going to see me prospecting or presenting and just going off on tangents for 30 minutes about XYZ, because that's not selling at that point. Okay. Now, the second part, I wrote sidestep unconscious responses. An unconscious response is I walk up to you before I even say anything, or even after I say hello, you say not interested. That's an unconscious response. You know why? It just came out. You didn't stop and think and say, oh, I'm going to say not interested. It just fires out. You go to the mall. Oh, sir, let me sell you a phone. Not interested. You even say it before they finish saying what they're going to say. And you won't even look at them many times. Or if you do, it's not interested. So when I said sidestep them, this is what I mean. I knock on a door. Hey, my name is Bryan. I'm a local realtor. Hey, I'm not interested. Okay, cool. I present my next question. Got it. Anyways, I just have one or two questions for you, then I'll go. And I say, I was in an area giving everybody a market update, whatever your script is. That's literally how you sidestep an unconscious response. Now, I'm going to give you more here in a second, but that one I just gave you, delivered comfortably, works the vast majority of the time. Because guess what? If they were going to close the door, they're going to close the door anyway. But a lot of those conversations, they'll stick with it and they'll keep talking to me. Another one, because the majority of you are in real estate, they say not interested, say, no worries, I'm not selling anything. And don't pause. Keep talking. I was stopping by because a home just sold around the corner. Did you see it? Well, the Johnsons, yeah, they sold for 500, blah, blah, and get into your script. Don't even pay it any mind. What we do as a mistake is we'll dwell on that and you'll message me and say, man, Bryan, get this, dude. They said not interested. What do I say? And then you'll like try to come up with some objection handler for not interested when it's merely an unconscious response. Okay. Now, as you guys, especially those of you who are closer to me, or maybe some of you are on here who are on my coaching, when you delve more into like NLP and hypnosis and you really study communication and human psychology, you'll start to see why people respond this way, the root of it, and you'll have a better understanding of it. And what I'm saying will make a lot more sense to you. But if this is like the first time you're hearing any of these terms or terminology, right, what you need to understand is when I say unconscious response, meaning the person's not consciously aware of what they're doing. Like if I want to touch my screen right now, I'm consciously saying touch the screen. It's not an automatic response. An automatic response is the doctor uses his little tool on your knee and your knee goes up, right? There's no thought there. It's just a reaction. Okay. That's what the unconscious response is. The hammer is you saying hello, and then their response is not interested or not right now or blah, blah, blah. Okay. You know how I started figuring this stuff out before I even learned about, all the fancy stuff? I remember people saying it. And after a while, I got frustrated because I couldn't really figure out why they were saying it. I would tell people, I would say, I didn't even tell you anything. What do you mean you're not interested? And a lot of people would stop and be like, oh, and then they would finally realize that they said not interested and it would click. So out of just me, almost like desperation to figure it out, I was like, why are people saying this? I was like, dude, I didn't even say anything. What do you mean you're not interested? And it would like get them to now become aware. They would go off the automatic programming and their awareness would come back and they'd be like, oh. Now, some of them would still close the door and leave, but a lot of them would be like, oh, and then I would start talking and boom, now we have a conversation. And I would leave that interaction scratching my head like, technically what I just did, people would say, don't do it, but it worked. That's what started piquing my interest in some of this sales stuff and, psychology and all this, because I said, this goes against the grain, right? This is counterintuitive. What you would think or believe or what a lot of people teach or tell, it's not that way. And I started figuring this out, just experimenting and kind of being like, okay, well, I've committed myself to this. I need to get good at it. Let's figure this thing out, right? So these unconscious responses, for the most part, acknowledge it. Okay, got it. And then keep talking. And you will be surprised how often it works. Here's another response, right? If you guys are looking for more. I'm not interested. That's exactly why I stopped by today. Watch how they're like, huh? That's exactly why I'm calling you today. That's exactly why I knocked on your door today. Or you know what? I'm so glad you said that. And that's exactly why I stopped by. Why? Because half the people I worked with last year initially told me they're not interested. And then I'm going to keep talking. If I'm going to add something to this, whenever you guys make your responses, do not. The incorrect thing to do is to stop and pause and wait for a response from them. You respond or sidestep, and then you continue your script. That's how you do it. Okay? Because if you sit there and pause and you expect for them to give you a response, they're not going to give you a response that you want. Remember, the one who's prospecting, selling, persuading, influencing is the one who's asking questions and the one who's in control of the conversation. If I'm going to present the conversation to them, right, by you throwing hello or whatever, and you're engaging in the conversation, from that moment, you need to be in control. There's always somebody who's dominating the conversation or who is in control, always. And it's the one who's asking the questions. Okay, cool. That's number 2. What else do we have written down here? Oh, here's another one I wrote down. Expect people to say no and move forward. A lot of us have to reframe that word in our mind. Many of us want to avoid that word. We don't like hearing it. We want people to say yes, 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 yes. And there's almost like this anxiety or kind of like negative stigma that you put with the word no. Let me help you with that. The moment somebody says no, that's when the game begins. Why? Before we even get into an explanation, it's been statistically proven, you probably heard this, the majority of yeses or appointments or signed contracts came after the 4th or 5th. It's like 80 or 85% come after the 4th or 5th. There's like the follow-up, sales came after the 5th follow-up call, like 80%, but there's also the getting the yes from the no. That's a separate statistic. I think it's 85% or something of people agreed to sign or agreed to meet after the 4th, anywhere between 4 to 6 no's. So we know now with data, with hard data, scientifically proven, that first no, you need to get it out of the way. So now my mind, instead of freaking out when they say no, I hear no, I'm like, check, that's 1. Let's get a few more, and then I'll get a yes. It changes the game. No does not mean you're not getting anywhere. No just means I have a question. Or better yet, how I reframe it, no means not yet. You ready to meet Mr. Seller? They say no, I hear, not yet. Okay, cool. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. So when you hear no, that's when you need to buckle up, because now the fun begins. Now it's up to you through your dialogues and your questions and your scripting to reach the conclusion of getting an appointment, or at the very least, another follow-up call, getting their information, agreeing to speak in the future, agreeing to stay in touch, or whatever the end goal is of your particular call. I know for most of us, the goal is to always set up a meeting or an appointment. However, if we're talking to somebody who's not, going to be a potential customer right now or in the near future, you still want to have a cordial conversation, gather their cell phone, gather their email, their name, their address, put it in your database, and then put them on some sort of sequence so you can start building up a connection and relationship with them. So there's always a desired outcome. If you don't get the appointment, then there's others that are below on different tiers, right? And that's what you want to go for. But when you hear a no, just like if you ask for the number and they say no, don't walk away. You can try different stuff. It's okay. Don't worry. I'm not going to spam you. Here. And hand them your phone. Be assertive. Be assumptive. Well, I just don't want to give them my number. I understand, because you think I'm going to bug you, right? Here, I'll make you a deal. If at any point after you give me my number today, or give me your number, today, this is what I'll do. If at any point you feel like I'm pushing you too much, let me know. I'll take you off the list and you never hear from me again. Fair? Okay, go ahead. I just asked 3 times for the number. You're going to get it. Now, if I ask 4 or 5 times and they say no, I can walk away being like, dude, I tried everything. If they told me no, they wouldn't have told anybody else yes. I'm not going to leave that interaction like, oh man, I should have said this or I should have said that. You see what I mean? I didn't let that first no or initial resistance stop me. I accepted it as part of the path, because all that no is a speed bump in the road. What do you do when there's a speed bump in the road? Do you stop and turn around, or do you just slow down and go over it? You slow down and you go over it. Pretty simple, right? Just like even here in Miami, Now that I'm here, there's certain residential neighborhoods and parking lots that have those little bumps. You just slow down and you go over it. Not a big deal. So when you expect no, it changes it. You don't fear no. You don't resist no. You accept it as a part of this process of selling to people. All right. It's inevitable. Most people, and this is really where it derives from, most people are not agreeable. Well, they're agreeable in the sense of they'll follow the masses. But whenever you're like in a discussion and you're looking to influence or persuade somebody, most people are not agreeable. So they're not just going to bow down and say, yes, 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 yes. So it's going to take some work, right? And that's the beauty in the art form of sales, is now how do we navigate that to get a yes, right? Let's see, what's next here? Oh, here's some basics that we need to cover. Preparation. Here's one. If you guys are going to be making calls and going door to door, all of that should be planned the day before. You don't wake up and show up to your office, and then when you're on your prospecting time, look up numbers, look up neighborhoods, print out flyers. You don't do any of that. When you're supposed to be in the office making your calls or going door to door, that's when you do it. All the preparation is done either very early that morning, some of it, or the majority the night before. What neighborhood I'm going to, what doors I'm going to hit, what numbers I'm going to call, they're loaded in. Or if you're doing fresh expireds or FSBOs, you load them in like, 6, 7 in the morning, way before. All that preparation, what I'm going to wear, my shoes, right? You already fill up your car with gas. All that stuff has to be done the day before. Because otherwise it's just a nice excuse. Well, I can't door knock yet. I got to go to the gas station, right? Then you buy something to drink, you're drinking it, you're filling up your tank, then you're like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. And then you stop. And then by the time you get to the neighborhood, you already wasted an hour, hour and a half. Okay? Do the preparations the night before. All the stuff that you do online, Mojo, all that, have all the login info saved. So you log on, you click, and you're on, right? If it has that option. Clean out your desk if you're going to make calls, and only leave your screen with that one window open of your Mojo or whatever your dialer is. Or if you're doing like I was before, where you're calling off a list, only your list on your desk. I'm going to recommend something to you guys. This may seem old school, but I have this at my office here. I had it in my office in California. If you're going to make calls, whether by hand or with a dialer, get a landline. Not only is it more reliable, it's less likely to pop up as spam versus a cell phone, right? And it allows you to get your cell phone out of your hand and out of the room. Because when you make calls, make calls. Don't be scrolling on Facebook and responding to people and checking your email. Put your phone in another room and use the landline to make calls. You can buy landlines now for $10. And if you have to set up a landline in your home because you don't have one, like a regular telephone number, they're super cheap nowadays. Most bundles with cable, phone, and all that, I mean, in most neighborhoods now, I think you can get it for probably like 30, 40, $50 a month. Okay. Also with the landline, you can buy a lot of these products that are headsets, whether Bluetooth or wired, and it just makes calling more convenient because the last piece to this is stand up. When you guys are making calls, stand up. This is the only presentation I'm doing today sitting down. Most of my lectures and everything, I raise the stand-up desk and I do it. If you need to, like I was before, where I didn't have a desk that I could raise, I would literally, on a regular desk, put crates, boxes, and I would put the phone, I would put my little laptop or my screen up at the level where I could stand. And I would do that to force myself to stand up because you can be hands-free. And number two, when you stand up, your voice projects differently because your diaphragm isn't compressed, it's open. You have better energy, right? And it's just different. If I listen to somebody speak, 9 times out of 10, I can tell if they're standing up or sitting down. Very rarely can I not. It's a little bit more difficult now because a lot of people, believe it or not, when you call them, they're wearing masks. So it's a little tougher to hear them. But if they're not wearing a mask, most times I can tell if somebody's standing up or sitting down. All right. Which brings me into my next one, energy and enthusiasm. Energy and enthusiasm is not this. Hi, Jim. Hey, my name is Bryan. I'm a local real estate agent. How's it going today? That's not energy and enthusiasm. That's being a clown. Okay. Energy can be bottled up, and it's all about your attitude and your delivery. Like I could speak at this volume and still be energetic. There's nothing about my voice right now that's not full of energy and oozing with enthusiasm. You can hear it. You can feel it. but I'm not being loud and I'm not being obnoxious. It's just animated how I'm speaking. Now, if you're standing, it's a lot easier for you to incorporate your body language into the speaking. A lot of people comment on that. I move a lot when I speak. Well, yeah, that's a part of energy and enthusiasm. I'm moving, right? You get emotion in it. Emotion, energy and motion. Boom. That's where a lot of these words are derived from if you put them together and you trace the history of them, right? As simple as that sounds, I want you to track. Have a mirror in front of you and track and compare your first call to your last call. And you'll see, especially if those of you are recording your calls, which I recommend all of you do, check the quality and sound of your voice on the first call versus the last call. Even what you say, people will follow the script on the first call or door knock. And then by the 30th door knock, like the 30th conversation, they show up, they're like, you don't want to sell your house, do you? Oh, okay. I didn't think so. Bye. It's like, dude, that's not the script. And you have no enthusiasm. What if that last one, if you had the enthusiasm, they would have mustered up the energy to actually talk to you. But because you half-assed it, they didn't talk to you. How would that make you feel if you found out later that I came and took that listing and you're like, but I talked to that person. What the hell? They said they didn't want to sell. Well, because you didn't come correct. That's why. That is probably costing you guys more opportunities or will cost you more opportunities than anything else. I've gotten people, literally, I've gotten clients who have told me, I went with you, dude, because, man, your enthusiasm is contagious. Like as soon as we started talking to you, we just couldn't stop listening. Exactly. So it had nothing to do with my suit, my cars, or anything else. It was me. That's what I want. I want people focused on me because I can win that game all day. Because if the next guy shows up who sells 500 homes a year and I only sell 100, what do? I have to even the playing field somehow. Now, the beauty of communication is if you can merge emotion and logic in your communication, it's going to be very tough to beat you. We know that most people aren't going to make a decision logically. If that was the case, then no new agents like you right now, if you are, or me, 9, 10 years ago would ever have a chance because logically they would just compare. Bryan's new in the business, sold 2 houses. Joe Smith has been in the business 20 years. He sold 500 houses. Well, we're going with Joe Smith. I beat that Joe Smith a million times because of stuff like this. So for many of you, to make it easy for you to understand it, it's literally like acting until it becomes a part of you. You have to act. You're being paid to perform. This is a performance art. Selling and communicating, persuading, influence. This is a performing art. Now you may come back and say, well, I'm not like that. Well, you need to change. I wasn't either. But now in every moment of my day and my life, I'm like this. I'm smiling more. I'm animated. I'm very talkative. I wasn't like that before. I'm sure many of you aren't right now, probably, but it changed. You have to change. You have to become that thing that gets the result, right? You've heard that in classic self-help stuff. You don't become successful until you change and become the person who attracts success. That's exactly it. Because the version of you now might get on the phone and not get the result, but the version of you 6 months from now, sharper, stronger, better communicator, more energy, more enthusiasm, they'll show up and get the result. And that's what you got to aim for. But the energy and enthusiasm has to be there. You put me on the phone or in front of somebody who's in a bad mood and watch me change it very quickly. Because you can't be around me and not be affected by it. It's impossible. Because this goes beyond human logic, right? Told you guys, very well studied in human psychology and all that stuff. I know how to do these things systematically. And I know certain things that me just showing up and not even doing anything creates an effect. All of you have the potential to do that too. But you have to transform to become that, beacon of light or whatever you want to call it, that then people can't help but respond to, whether it's on the phone, at your meetings, door knocking, or whatever it is, okay? Here's another one, right? Diversify your follow-up, right? We know follow-up is probably one of the most important things. The follow-up and the appointment setting, extremely important. Diversify it. Many people they call over and over. Oh, I've called him 10 times. Well, what else are you doing? Have you stopped by and knocked on the door? Have you sent them a handwritten card? Have you emailed them? Have you texted them? Have you sent them a video text? Have you sent them a voice message? Have you DM'd them on social media, right? I just gave you like 9 different ways of following up. Make that a habit. When you guys meet people, get their social media and add them. Even if you're not doing business with them yet, add them, or at least find their profile and follow it. Why? That's another follow-up. Hey, Jim, I DM him on Facebook. Hey, Jim, I know we missed our call, but I'm just checking in. Let me know. Even if he doesn't respond, if he sees it, you can see that they saw it. Right? So now he just saw Bryan again. Boom. I'm doing my job. I can't force him to respond. All I can do is be creative and do my job. Okay. The big one is sending videos. If you guys send people videos, you'll be surprised at the response rate. It will blow you away. And I don't care if you're well polished on video. You don't have to be. I look back at some of my, my old videos, and they were horrible. The videos I would send to people, horrible. But hey, they still got the result. And that's what you want. Okay. Well, this is a good one. And I'm going to save that one for last. Here's another one, consistency. You want the best prospecting tip for 2022? Consistency. Pledge that in 2022, you will consistently prospect more than you ever have. Because I can tell all of you, regardless of your skill level or what lead source you're going after, if all of you prospect consistently, minimum 3 to 4 hours, 5 to 6 days a week in real estate, 6 months from now or a year from now, you will have money in your pocket. You will have closed transactions, and you will have a business that you're building. Whether it's a few transactions or 12 or 15 or 20, I can't say for sure, but without a doubt, you will, because that momentum and consistency will get your mind going to say, I need to build my systems. I need to do that. Because once you put that thing in motion, it fires everything up for you, and everything else will be figured out. You'll get more confident. You'll start to get some leads, and you're like, oh man, I need to put this thing together. I'm getting leads. I need the system. Otherwise, I'm going to lose all these leads. You see? And it starts getting you and forcing you to make the changes that you may even be resisting. But the consistency, man, and it's tough because your emotions go up and down. Your environment may not be conducive to productivity. I mean, it could be a million things, but guess what? Me and everybody else had to get through that too. So the question is are you committed to make the change and do this consistently? Or are you just going to fall by the wayside like everybody else and make the same excuse when people sit around in their little circles and cry about who has it worse? Don't do that to yourself. Don't be that person. Oh, I tried real estate 10 years ago. Come on, don't do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be following me or on this webinar. Commit to yourself. Don't worry about me or anybody else. Make the commitment for you, and it has to come from you, for you, by you, no one else. Here's the last one that I want to cover with you guys, and I'll open it up to a few questions. So in the Q&A button, start putting some of your questions. You need to learn to scale up and down on your questions. So imagine a gradient scale, like you're raising the volume on a sliding bar, right? And what I mean by that is, for the sake of the reference, we'll say scaling up means my question is more blunt and direct and has more impact. And if we scale it down, my question or statement is a lot softer and less invasive. Okay. This is a skill and an art form that many of you need to learn. What I mean by that is, let's take questions that can be maybe a little bit too much, such as, where are you moving to? How much do you owe on the house? Those are questions that, just written the way they are and delivered like that, are near the top of the gradient scale because they're very direct and they touch personal information. So if somebody doesn't know you or they don't feel comfortable with you, they may say none of your business, or I don't feel comfortable answering that. However, there can be ways of lessening the blow, but still getting that question answered. Okay, so let's look at that question that I gave you. How much do you owe on the house? Right? One way of doing it is setting yourself up, right? Such as, oh, do you still owe anything on the house, or is it paid off? Oh no, we still owe a little bit on the house, right? See, that question led me up. So if I present the next question, which is how much do you owe, that already raises a likelihood of them answering it, because they've already answered the one that's a one step below it. Okay. So that's like the build up method that you can do, right? So if we're going to use the same example of where are you moving to, I could soften that by saying, hey, if you guys had sold the house, like let's say we're talking to an expired, were you guys looking to stay in this area, or were you moving out of the area? Oh no, we're moving out of the area. Oh, okay, cool. Where were you headed to? Now the likelihood of them answering that question skyrockets, because they already answered the first one, and you're building off momentum. Okay. Another way is the way that you ask it. right? You can use what's called softeners. Mr. Seller, how much do you owe on the property? Just a guess. Doesn't have to be exact. Increases likelihood of them answering, right? Because I take pressure off of it by saying it doesn't have to be exact, right? Those are softeners. Here's another way, words. Do you maybe know or have an idea how much you owe on the home, Mr. Seller? Do you possibly have access to a mortgage statement or maybe some sort of, paper trail that might give you an estimate or a number of what you owe on the home? Might, possibly, maybe, right? Those are words that are considered softeners that if you throw them into your question strategically, it lessens the blow of the question to come off as too invasive or too strong. The main thing of this is, if you notice, when I'm saying these questions, my delivery changes. Yeah, you have any idea? It's like, it's not a big deal. You have any idea what you owe ballpark on the house? It's not, how much do you owe on the house, Gabe? Hey, Gabe, how much do you owe on your house? That tone and question is very direct. If I say, Gabe, any idea what you owe on your house? A little inflection in the voice, that lessens it. It makes it obvious that that's a question, but it lessens the blow. Okay, cool. Now I could talk about that one all day, but this is what I'll do, guys. I'll pause it here and I'll be on for a few more minutes answering any questions you may have. You can type them in the chat. You can put them in the Q&A box. I'll do my best to answer all of them. Okay, is there a difference between where leads come from? For example, Vaulton versus Vortex Redex. I guess there's going to be some difference. Anonymous attendee doesn't have your name there. There is going to be a degree of difference because different softwares provide different levels of accuracy for their leads, because most of these will pull from a particular database. And the way that these softwares work, my friend, is they'll have a minimum criteria. So if their criteria is we need at least 3 different numbers for us to give you the lead, if they can't pull 3 numbers for that lead, they won't give you the lead. For other ones, they have different criteria. So depending on the criteria and the severity of it will determine the accuracy of that particular lead, right? Let's see. Eric asked, I started doing video text in the AM for leads, but not asking for business, just to follow up and check on them. Is that something to do more often? Okay, great question. What you guys want to do, you want to set 3 times. You want to set 3 times in your schedule where you set aside 20 minutes or so to follow up in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, right? And when you first meet somebody and they become a lead, you say something like this. Great. Thanks for giving me your information, Mr. Lead. By the way, let's say I needed to get a hold of you, right? And I call you, when are you going to pick up for sure if I call you? Morning, afternoon, around lunch, or evening? They say morning, I write down morning. Now I know I'm going to follow up with this dude in the morning, okay? Now, remember, Eric, a lead is someone who wants to buy or sell on our team, because you're on the team, in 30 days or less. If they don't want to do that, they're not a lead, okay? And every time you guys are following up with a lead, you want to ask for the appointment if they're a lead, okay? That's if they're a bona fide lead. Now, if you guys have different, criteria for lead, that's fine. But if they're not an actual lead who's going to buy or sell very soon, then you're just checking in. That's more of a database contact, sphere of influence contact. It's not follow-up. Follow-up is specifically for people that are designated as leads that are going to buy or sell very soon, okay? Best place to get scripts, Google, Heather. I mean, you can get so many. I think every real estate coach has free scripts at this point. They shouldn't be hard to get a hold of. If you can't, for whatever reason, you can message me on social media or email me, and whatever we have, I'll send to you. I know you have examples on YouTube. We can give some here live on different approaches to use while door knocking, just as a hot market. Oh, what's up, Andrew? Good to see you, man. You don't really need a different approach, bro. It got to the point where, like, when people would go with me, because they would ask me that question a lot, every door I would knock on, before even introducing myself, I'm like, hey, are you looking to buy or sell real estate right now? And I would start the conversation that way. And there was no change in the response versus when I used the script. Ultimately, bro, it's going to be your delivery. Okay. Now, as far as if you're looking for different stuff, add questions to the script. Use any of those and then ask, do you own any other property? Oh, you own another one? Great. Have you thought about doing a 1031 exchange? What are you cash flowing? Do you want to increase it? Those are the types of approaches you can change by adding relevant questions that may open up a different door for you to do another transaction with that person. That's what I would change. I wouldn't worry so much about the introductions or just listed versus hot market. You get what I'm saying? Focus on that, like injecting those good questions, and it'll help you a lot, man. Cool. What CRM worked best for you when you were building up your database? I was very strapped for cash. You're welcome, Andrew. I was very strapped for cash in the beginning. So what I did was I was broke in the beginning, but I got a credit card and I signed up for coaching. And at the time, the coaching was $1,000 a month. So other than that, I didn't have any money until I closed my first deal. I used Excel spreadsheet, and I would just write dates and information there, and I would follow it. The moment I could actually spend money, I ended up getting Mojo. And for temporarily, I used that dialer Mojo as my database kind of, because I could schedule calls, create folders, right? Since then, the best one I've used hands down is what we have with EXP for me, which is KV Core. That one's been the best overall. And I've messed around with some other ones, but KV Core for me was the best. And in the beginning, it was just very kind of like up in the air, right? Because I didn't have access to the best tools like you guys have now. Like now you can probably get cheap softwares, you know? KV Core though would be my recommendation. How to motivate yourself for prospecting when you feel down. I don't know if you can do that, anonymous attendee. What I can say is this: if you guys are very clear about what you want and what real estate will lead you to, you're not going to have any problems when you're feeling down. Because there was times where I felt absolute garbage, but I would have pictures of stuff that I wanted to achieve or moments that I wanted to experience, and I would look at them and I'm like, dude, I want that shit so bad. I don't care how I feel. I'm still going to knock on doors, right? Because the only other option is you don't do it. And if you don't do it, you become a statistic. But I was so clear about what I wanted. It would never stop me if I didn't feel good, if that makes sense. Build up courage to make a phone call. You just got to do it. You just got to do it. Practicing and role playing is great, but you do that while you call. You guys have to get over that hump. There's no magic juju or juice to get over and building up the courage. Again, like I answered the previous question, if you guys want something so bad, no matter what's on that path, you'll do it, because everybody's afraid of anything the first time they do it. The first time you jumped off something, you were scared. The first time you learned how to ride a bike, you were scared. Probably as a baby, the first time you tried to learn how to walk and you fell, you were scared, right? So you just got to do it. Is there a different way to knock luxury homes? Best advice I can give you guys: luxury isn't different. Okay. The people, the conversation might be a little bit different when they actually start working with you, but the process is the same. When choosing 4 of the 10 lead generating activities in the sense of staying consistent. Well, that depends, Emmanuel. You don't have to only pick 4. You can pick more, right? What I would recommend is you give them an even amount of time each. I wouldn't necessarily separate them by day, and track your numbers. And if you're seeing that particular lead sources are more fruitful for you, start putting more time into those. That would be the way that I would do it. I mainly do just as it just sold, sprinkle and expires the FISBOs. Yep. That's very good, Christian, because that's what I had to do in the beginning. When I got into real estate about 10 years ago, there was no inventory, and the vast majority of my prospecting was just as it just sold. So as long as you're collecting people's information and building your database and staying on top of any leads that you do get, I think that's great. How long did it take you to get your first deal from knocking? My first deal or two came from calls. And then I got a wave of deals from door knocking. I think I got an expired from door knocking pretty quickly. I think it was like 2 or 3 months in, but then after that, I think it was my 5th or 6th month in the business. I got a wave of like 3 or 4 listings that I had gotten from door knocking those months before. I can't remember exactly because it's been like 10 years, but when you average it out, it's about the same. It just seemed like the deals came differently. It seemed like when I got door knocking deals, they would come in waves. Like I'd get 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, you know? What can I do today to start having contagious energy? Easy. You need to start communicating, right? And you need to start practicing these things. So you guys need to start doing stuff like Toastmasters, talking to people in public, right? Doing something different, exuding it, and say, hey, if I did have contagious energy, how would I carry myself? and start doing that as much as possible. It's difficult in the beginning, but you have to make it a practice. Start with yourself in the mirror. Every day you wake up, smile, right? It's silly, but no one else is watching. Who cares, right? Yeah, dude. I would start with this, Andrew. Whatever businesses you frequent locally, offer to interview them and talk about them and promote their business. Start with that. Because I'm sure there's restaurants, markets, barbershops, and places that you go to locally that you maybe know the owner already, or you just hang out there because you like it and you go there a couple times a week. Start with them, right? And then as you start doing those, other ideas will come to you. Oh, I should go here or there, because that's the easiest place to start. And it's the simplest place to start. Flyer drops. Um, I never agreed with flyer drops unless you knocked, Nikolai. If you guys are going to drop flyers and not knock, to me, that's a complete waste of your money and time. I don't know anybody who drops flyers and has gotten calls and a ton of listings consistently, unless they do it as like one of a million things they do, like those top agents who do door hangers, flyers, billboards, right? But then that's a full campaign that's done consistently, and they already have a brand and a reputation in that city. If you're going to drop flyers, great. Just make sure that you're dropping and you're and talking to people, right? Best time to door knock? There is no best time, Joseph. I've door knocked weekdays, weekends, morning, afternoon, at night. It always balances out. The most important thing is you doing it consistently. All right.